This is not a steak, but it will be soon, and by the time it reaches your plate, it's going to be more expensive than you're used to. That's because corn prices have nearly doubled since last year, and while that might be great for corn farmers, it's less great for anyone who enjoys a cheap burger. The rising price of corn has forced ranchers to look for ways to cut costs. For industrial-scale farmers, that means feeding cattle with cheaper recipes.
That's corn silage, high-moisture corn, which is the yellow kernels you see, and then we feed some byproducts, potato chips, and a chocolate blend, which has some cocoa shells. You see some M&Ms with it. It's a byproduct from Hershey and Mars.
Feeding cows a diet of fast food is just the beginning. Because they only get about $20 to $30 a head, the Nisley Brothers Ranch in southern Pennsylvania needs to raise as many cattle as possible as fast as they can. On larger ranches, that can mean raising over 4,000 cattle at a time, though at the Nisley's ranch the average is closer to 1,000. The funny thing about this is that cows aren't naturally corn-eating animals, never mind corn mixed with M&Ms and potato chips.
Here, girls!
Cows naturally feed off of grass. And 150 miles north of the Nisley Ranch, Ron Kipps raises his cattle in exactly this way.
We do what they call rotational grazing.
But farms like this produce less than 10% of the cattle raised in the country, because raising grass-fed cows for mass consumption is considered inefficient.
For the number of cattle that we're feeding, we couldn't grass-feed cattle here. We can get more off an acre by growing crops, corn and soybeans and small grain than we could by putting cattle on.
For one thing, grass-fed cows take longer to reach market weight. They also require much larger parcels of land for grazing. And on Ron's grass farm, there's only enough land for 100 cattle. To make a profit, he has to charge about 30% more than the Nisley brothers. But there are benefits to grass-fed beef. Studies show that grass-fed cattle are richer in vitamins and omega-3 fatty acids compared to conventionally raised beef. And there is no need for petroleum-based fertilizer to grow the corn feed. Cows have their own special way of fertilizing the land. And then there's the taste issue. Because of the abundance of cord-fed cattle, most Americans are used to beef that has a high fat content.
I don't know if I ever had strictly grass-fed beef.
To advocates of conventionally raised beef, the higher fat content is said to give the meat its flavor. Though, in some cases, one has to wonder if that's the natural flavor of meat or the M&Ms you're tasting. Besides moving cattle to the slaughterhouse, the only cost of raising grass-fed cattle is harvesting hay. But because the profit margins are so slim, rising gas prices have wiped out Ron Kipps' revenue.
We're working at almost a zero market or margin. Okay, we're getting more self-satisfaction out of this than the actual funds for our pocket.
Despite all of the costs associated with industrial-scale farming, decades of improved efficiency measures mean that corn-fed beef is still less expensive than grass-fed. To keep themselves competitive, conventional cattle ranching will have to invent new ways to cut feed costs, which means that even chocolate byproduct and fermented corn might become too costly to feed to cows. For the Wall Street Journal Digital Network, I'm Matt Rivera.